It is hard to imagine what kind of American might have reason to want war. Until you hear the kind of numbers Congress heard this week. In tonight's fourth story, the government's top three auditors told a congressional review that a review they did of the $57 billion of contracts in Iraq they could get access to turned up more than $10 billion in overcharges or unaccounted spending. That's one mysterious or stolen dollar for every 6 actually spent. And who knows how that ratio will change when the remaining $300 billion in Iraq spending is audited. Where's all the money going? That could be funding proper armor and supplies for our troops. One company accounted for more than 10 of that $10 billion, $2.7 billion of it, than any other company, Halliburton, of course. Its CEO, David Lessar, took home more than $12 million in 2005, according to Forbes magazine. Lessar, of course, got where he is thanks to Halliburton's previous chief, Vice President Dick Cheney, the single greatest proponent, at least obviously, of the Iraq War. Democrats are not only holding hearings to expose the problem. Yesterday, they introduced legislation to not only stiffen penalties for war profiteers, but also to make more contracts competitive and to require actual qualifications for some of the contracting oversight jobs now being held by Republican political appointees. Let's bring in Robert Greenwald, documentary filmmaker who looked at this nation's war profiteers in his movie Iraq for Sale, which is now out on DVD. Thanks for your time tonight again, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
Contractors and the officials who are ostensibly overseeing them will talk a lot about how tough it is to get a receipt in a war zone and other good-sounding cliches like that. Is there truth to that cliches, or are we actually talking about corporate CEOs who are knowingly and happily stealing millions in profits off the backs of their fellow Americans, including the troops?
I think it's an obscenity what's going on. Corporations know how to make profit. Corporations know how to make money. They're not supposed to be fighting wars. They're not there to win hearts and minds of people. And David Lessar made actually over $100 million in his stock since the war has began. To me, that's outrageous. And what do these guys want? They want a blank check. They want to be able to fill in the zeros. And they make a petty bank robber like Jesse James look like nothing.
$10 billion that we don't know about, 2.7 is attributed to Halliburton. Other than that statistic, why do we keep hearing specifically about Halliburton?
Well, we're hearing about Halliburton because they have a lock on the government. They have a lock on the military. There's an interconnecting board of directors. There are generals on their boards. There are former senators and congressmen and high elected officials who go up and back. And it's a system that needs to be broken. And I think we have to really call into question the very core issue, which is, yes, they're stealing, but even above and beyond that, Keith, should people be profiting? Should corporations be making millions and millions when Iraqis and Americans are being killed? That, to me, goes right to the heart of the issue, and we really need to start asking that question harder and harder. Fortunately, you know, Senator Dorgan introduced this amazing bill, which will start to give real hard penalties to these guys who are creating treasonous behavior.
About Mr. Lessar, not only is he a Bush donor, he also sits on the board of something called the American-Iranian Council, which identifies itself as a catalyst for change through dialogue and understanding. Is this man and the other contractor CEOs, are they actively involved in getting pro-war candidates elected to office? And, you know, if so, why are they doing that?
Well, again, what these corporations and their heads are doing is they are funding candidates who will give them business, who will look the other way. I mean, no oversight, no transparency, no checking on these contracts. How outrageous it is. I was listening to some of the hearing, and the controller was saying for every dollar we spend, we get $106 back to the taxpayer. And yet we have people in this administration and elected officials who are fighting and resisting that these contractors and the corporations should have any oversight. And to me, it's completely groundless and actually goes to this issue of people who say, you know, it's really more important that I make profit than I support any kind of patriotic action.
One part of the line of thinking is not clear to me. Perhaps you can explain this to me. If it is to this degree about not just dollars, but billions of dollars, why the trouble getting armor to troops, armor for themselves, armor for their vehicles? It would seem to me that certainly could be a profit center for somebody, and if there were exorbitant profits, at least the troops would be getting what they need to protect themselves in Iraq.
Well, I think that it's a really good question, and I think there's a couple of problems that come together there. One is that we went into a war that was clearly ill-prepared, not managed well. All the logical steps that you need to take were not taken. We went to war without enough people and without enough support because the administration was trying to do it on the cheap. And then when you have people profiting and putting money into the corporate pockets that should be going to the armor, you have a whole other set of circumstances, right? I mean, the fact that they're taking millions and millions that says, I'm going to pay back my stockholder or I'm going to pay myself back, that means less dollars are going to build the armor and protect the troops and the water supplies for the Iraqis and hospitals for Iraqis. And by the way, in addition to the money you talked about, you know, there's the $9 billion of Iraqi money that's unaccounted for.
War for profit, as Mr. Greenwald describes in his DVD, the documentary now on DVD, Iraq for Sale. Robert Greenwald, as always, great thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Keith.